This time, the business comes with a front porch. You buy a house in a town people visit, fill it with furniture, photograph it in the late afternoon light, and put it on the internet. From tonight, strangers pay you by the night. And the nightly math is the best sales pitch in real estate. A typical American short-term rental books its nights around $245, so a house a tenant would rent for $2,000 a month can gross close to double that hosting weekenders. Now, hold that against the other half of the picture. The largest professional short-term rental manager in the country was sold off last year for roughly 3 cents on every dollar it was once worth, and one of the most celebrated brands in the business went straight into liquidation. The houses earned double. The professionals running thousands of them lost nearly everything. Untangling that is what this video is for. Along the way, you will learn what the fat nightly premium actually pays you for, how many sold nights a month separate a working asset from an expensive hobby, and how one vote at City Hall deleted 18,000 listings in America's biggest market overnight. But first, a number to keep in your pocket: $14,000. By the platform's own reporting, that is what the typical host makes in a year. $14,000. If you want to see where the rest of the money goes, subscribe. It is the one reservation in this video without a cleaning fee. Ticket In has 3 stubs. The first is the house. The median existing American home now sells for around $430,000, and a lender treats a rental house as a business, not a residence. On the investor loans most buyers use, the down payment runs 20 to 25%, at rates lately between 6.5% and 8%, well above an ordinary mortgage. So the entry check on a median house is roughly $85,000 to $110,000 before closing costs. The second stub is the furniture, because this is the only rental in real estate that comes with spoons. Furnishing a 2 or 3 bedroom house to the standard the photos demand runs about $15,000 to $35,000. Beds, sofas, linens, a kitchen that can survive strangers, and decor good enough to stop a thumb mid-scroll. The third stub is paperwork, a permit where your city requires one, plus real short-term rental insurance, because ordinary homeowners, coverage does not cover paying guests, and the commercial version costs 2 to 3 times a landlord policy. Stack the stubs, and opening a median-priced Airbnb takes somewhere between $110,000 and $160,000 in cash. And nobody has slept in it yet. Then the meter starts, and the first surprise arrives with the first booking. Since late 2025, Airbnb has been moving nearly all hosts onto a single host-side service fee of about 15.5%, where most hosts used to see a 3% line item while guests paid the rest. The total toll is similar, but it now sits on your side of the ledger, gone before you see a dollar. The second surprise is that you are now the utility company. A tenant pays for her own hot showers and her own thermostat opinions. A guest checks out at 11 with the air conditioning running. Electricity, water, internet, streaming, coffee, soap, toilet paper, yours now, every week, forever. Third surprise is the tax line. Cities tax a short stay like a hotel room, with lodging taxes commonly running 8 to 15%, sitting inside your total price. And the biggest cost in this business is not on any spreadsheet at all. It is a sentence in a municipal code, and it is waiting a few chapters ahead. A tenant brings a couch. A guest brings expectations. So where does the famous premium come from? Start from scratch, with the cruelest fact in hospitality. Think of an airline seat. The moment the plane pushes back, every empty seat on board becomes worth nothing, forever. A hotel room spoils the same way, and so does your Airbnb, because the night of June 9th cannot be sold on June 10th. A long-term lease is the opposite product. It sells a whole year of nights in one transaction, at a deep bulk discount, to one buyer who also mows the lawn. Now run the same house both ways. As a normal rental, it takes $2,000 to $2,400 a month. Call it $24,000 to $29,000 a year. As a short-term rental at recent national averages, about $245 a night, with roughly half the calendar selling. The same house grosses somewhere in the mid-40,000s. Call it $20,000 of extra gross, from the same roof on the same street. So what is the extra money for? It is for the 11 o'clock checkout and the 4 o'clock check-in on the same Saturday, the midnight message about the Wi-Fi, the coffee, restock, the cleaner scheduled every weekend, and a 5-star average defended one review at a time. So say it plainly, the premium over rent is not a return on your capital, it is a wage for hotel work. You did not buy a better rental. You bought a one-room hotel and gave yourself the front desk job. The tenant pays for the house, the guest pays for the staff, and the staff is you. Which brings us to the number that decides everything. The one promised at the top: sold nights. Across the other country, short-term rentals have lately been selling only around half their calendars, with national occupancy in the low 50s. Every point above that line is nearly pure margin, because the mortgage does not care whether the house slept empty. The professionals treat the calendar the way an airline treats a cabin. Prices move daily, dipping to fill the gap between two bookings, spiking for the festival weekend the amateur across town never heard about. The software for this is cheap. The discipline is rare. Then comes the flywheel amateurs discover too late. Reviews decide your place in the search results. Search position decides your bookings, and bookings decide your reviews. In market after market, the top slice of listings grosses several times what the median listing manages on the very same streets. The whole machine in one sentence: rate times sold nights times a review score that decides whether anyone sees the listing at all. You do not compete on the house. You compete on the calendar. Now pour a year through that machine and watch what drains out. Start with the mid-40s gross. The platform fee skims its 15% or so off the top. Cleanings run $100 to $150 per turnover, dozens of times a year. And yes, the guest usually pays a cleaning fee, but every dollar of it makes your total price uglier. Utilities and supplies take their monthly bite. The commercial insurance takes its doubled premium, and repairs happen at guest speed because a house with 50 check-ins a year ages like a rental car. Hand the whole job to a professional manager, and the going rate is 20 to 30% of gross, which is to say, the entire wage. For an owner doing the work herself, roughly half the gross tends to survive all of that. On our median house, call it the low to mid 20,000s, and be clear about what that number is. Operating margin before financing, not take home. Because now the mortgage arrives, and the mortgage does not negotiate. On a median house bought with 25% down at recent investor rates, the payments run about $24,000 to $28,000 a year. Set those two numbers side by side, and the standard issue American Airbnb, median house, borrowed money, national average calendar, works a full year of hospitality for approximately nothing. On rough math, the house needs to sell around 17 to 18 nights a month before its owner earns a single dollar, and the national calendar has lately been clearing closer to 15 or 16. Below 18 nights, the host works for the house. And now the sentence in the municipal code. As promised, everything this business earns rests on a permission. The permission to run what is effectively a hotel in a building zoned for living. Unlike the deed, that permission can be revoked by people you have never met, at a meeting you did not attend. New York City proved it in September of 2023, when a rule called Local Law 18 came into force. Short-stay hosts had to register. Registrations were hard to get, and the platforms were barred from processing payments for anyone unregistered. Within months, listings for stays under 30 days collapsed from around 22,000 to about 4,000. A drop of more than 80% in the largest market in the country. Worry, here is the detail that should keep a leveraged host awake. Those New York owners still hunted candons, owned their apartments, still owned the beds and the towels and the 5-star reviews. The business was simply switched off around the asset, while the mortgage kept running underneath it.
Sharned, and New York is a template, not an exception.
Cities keep tightening with permit caps, primary residence rules, and whole neighborhoods zoned out, which is why, in the strictest markets, the license itself is quietly the most valuable thing about the property. You can insure the house against fire. Nobody writes a policy against a vote. Step back, because the paradox from the opening still needs its answer. If one house can outgross its own rent by nearly double, how did the biggest professionals lose fortunes? The first mechanism is gold rush arithmetic. In 2023, the supply of available rental nights in America grew roughly twice as fast as demand, and revenue per available listing fell about 8% year over year. Hosts called it the Airbnbust. There are now around 1.7 million short-term rentals competing for the American traveler, and the traveler did not multiply to match. The second mechanism is the one that killed the professionals. Hospitality refuses to scale. Vacasa, the largest vacation rental manager in North America, went public in December of 2021, near $4.5 billion, lost roughly 97% of its share price, and was sold in 2025 for $5.30 a share. Sonder, the designer apartment brand that had hitched itself to Marriott, wound down and filed for liquidation in November of 2025. The reason is almost embarrassingly physical. 100,000 doors is not one business run 100,000 times cheaper. It is 100,000 Saturdays, each with its own sheets, its own cleaner, its own broken dishwasher. The spreadsheets promised software margins, and the buildings delivered housekeeping margins. Software scales. Sheets do not. So what does an owner actually clear? 2 honest scenarios. Scenario 1. You buy one house and do the work yourself. At national average numbers on a median-priced mortgaged house, the realistic early result is a few $1,000s a year in cash flow, sometimes zero, sometimes negative, while the quieter money works underneath. The loan balance shrinking, the house appreciating, the depreciation trimming your tax bill. The picture improves sharply when one thing breaks your way. A below-market purchase, a mostly cash deal, a town that caps permits while you hold one, or a calendar that sells 65% instead of 50%. Scenario 2. You become an operator. 8 or 10 doors in a genuine vacation market, priced daily like airline seats, cleaned by crews running routes, reviewed into the top of the search results. At that scale, the hospitality wage stops costing you your evenings and becomes the product you sell, and the portfolio can pay like the small hotel company it secretly is. 1 door is a side job. 10 doors is a hotel that refuses to admit it. And then there is the party that wins in every scenario. In October of 2007, 2 broke designers in San Francisco inflated 3 air mattresses on their apartment floor and charged conference visitors $80 a night, breakfast included. Last year, the company that grew out of that floor booked 533 million nights, collected over $12 billion in revenue, and carried a market value near $90 billion, while owning essentially none of the 8 million homes on its shelf. Millions of hosts bought the houses, furnished the rooms, absorbed the ordinances, and staffed the Saturdays. The platform kept its fee, and the customer relationship, on every single one. The hosts own the houses. The platform owns the demand, so fold it all back into the listing photos. The nightly premium was a wage from the day you bought the place. The permission to operate belongs to a city council, and the guest herself belongs to an app that started on an air mattress. Keep the number from your pocket in view, $14,000, the typical host's entire year. If you take one rule home from this breakdown, take this one. An Airbnb is not passive income. It is a small hotel with 1 employee, and the employee is you. Which business should we open up next? Subscribe so your seat is saved when it happens, and put your pick in the comments.